Hello, hello, hello. I'm here. Welcome, everyone. It is Sunday, January 15th, and I'm coming to you live from Tulum, Mexico. And I'm excited to be here. It's a little chilly out today, and I can't complain because I'm in the Caribbean, and that's beautiful. Today is an epic, epic message. So I want to welcome you. And oh yeah, Mindset Matters is here from England. Yeah, hello. What's your name, Mindset Matters? You want to put that in there? I'd love to know who you are. We're going to give the sisters a few minutes, and then I'm going to begin this transmission. So just so you know, these transmissions are awakened. They're soul food for the awakened woman. Christine, welcome. Nice to meet you, sister. So yes, these transmissions, these Dharma talks, this is soul education for the awakened woman. And I'm Kenlin, and I'm your host. I'm a curator, I'm a synthesizer, I'm a 6-2 projector, if you know what that means, and the founder of the Evolving Sisters Network. And every Sunday, we gather here as a community live at 9 a.m. California time, and whatever time zone that is for you. And these transmissions are co-created. They are from the gene keys as my jumping off point, as well as some astrology, and also with your energies here. We are entering into this awareness of the nature of our connections beyond time and space. How about that? All right, Myrna's here and Katie's here. The sisters are gathering. You can be a man joining this. That's why we put it on YouTube so that all of my community can join. And my mission is to support the feminine, the divine feminine, to rise, to wake up, to lead with her sacred power, to free her voice, and to have a say in the future that we're creating. And that's why I put together the Evolving Sisters Network, and that is an online membership portal that will ultimately feature women, everyday women who are stepping into their leadership and their gifts, ready to serve. And that's ultimately my vision, because we are all teachers and we're all students. It's that beautiful figure 8, and that's part of the soul symbol of the Evolving Sisters Network. We are all teachers, we are all students. We all have something to contribute in some way. And a lot of times the path of life is to figure out what is that gem, that jewel, and not that it has to get cultivated. So life, pressure, the fires of transformation cultivate that gift that you're here to offer. Oh, Christine says, I'm waking up and realizing that the power has always been in me. That's right. So ready for 2023 magical moments. I love that. Katie Hemphill's here also. Hello from snowy New Mexico. Yeah, so here we are gathering in the snow, the Caribbean, the rain, wherever you are, welcome. This is an epic transmission today. It, for me, synthesizes so much of the spiritual path and juxtaposes it against this mind, this fixed mind. And that fixed mind is what has produced the world in which we live right now, for better and for worse. So we get to dive into this. It's a beautiful teaching. And if you have a birthday today, I think today and tomorrow, it's the last day of Gene Key 61. And then we move into this frequency of limitation. And then we move into the new year. And that is Gene Key 41. That's the beginning of the mandala of human design gene keys, this body of work that I use to jump off and do these transmissions. So we're not really even in the new year until the new moon and gene key 41. So here we are, we've got one planet that went direct, Mars. Maybe some of you are feeling that already. And we have another planet, Mercury, that is in retrograde still. So we have these moments to really consider, what have we learned? And one of the things that I put out in my email was, who is supporting you when you can't? And so we're going to dive into that in the Razor's Edge. Walking the Razor's Edge is our Sunday community meeting after these live streams, and all the members of the Evolving Sisters Network are invited. You'll get that. If you're on my mailing list, you get that email. We also set it up where if you're not a part of the membership, you can just pay one off and take part in this community, Walking the Razor's Edge. I call it Walking the Razor's Edge because we are on the razor's edge. Spirituality, when you're walking on the path, it's kind of like that thing where you, as a spiritual person, try to become egoless, and that effort to become egoless is actually ego, right? Or in an effort to become less vain, that is vanity, because you're thinking about yourself. So that's the razor's edge. There's this moment where we walk on it, and we can experience the purity, and then boom, we're right back into shadow, or we're right back into ego. And that's perfect. That's how it is supposed to be. That's how it's made up here. And we get to remember, we get to wake up inside the dream. So 61, gene key 61, is the Shadow of Psychosis. I thought you all would like that, especially as we have observed over the last 3 years, the psychotic nature of the mind as it has played out during COVID, in the political environment. So this Shadow of Psychosis has a lot to say about our modern world and what got us here. Then we have the gift of inspiration. I'm going to call it more revelation. That word rings a little truer to me in how I perceive this pathway of the gene keys. And then the gift is called Sanctity. And it's the entering into the Holy of Holies, the mystery, capital M, the world of the unknown. And if you have been tracking me lately, you know I have a workshop coming up called The World is Your Oyster. And it is all about co-creating with life, with the universe, with yourself. You are life, you are the universe, co-creating with that force, the thing that is beyond you, to manifest a life that you want. It is really a very right-brained practice, although we'll do things that anchor it. So this is a perfect conversation for the conversations that I have been in my own head. So let's take a little dive in. This gene key is found in the crown. So 61 is in the head center. The head center is a pressure center. The root and the head are pressure centers. So the pressure to get shit done and to act, and the pressure to think and to know things. So if you have a defined head in human design, your knowing comes from inside yourself. And the shadow of that could be that you're inflexible, because it's not unclear to you what you want to think about. And for those of us who have an undefined crown, meaning it is white on the body graph of human design, and you don't have to know anything, just stay with me if you know nothing about human design or the gene keys. But if you do, I like to throw out a little higher level teaching. And if you have it white or undefined, you are open to ideas. And so your your way of thinking about things comes from the outside, which is a beautiful openness. And sometimes you can be like a squirrel, right? A dog chasing a squirrel, and all over the place. They say in the world of human design that when you have it open and undefined, or open or undefined, that's a term where you have even no gates if it's open and undefined, which is what happens over here. That's my chart. And you can be answering other people's questions. And one of the examples is someone asks you, where are my keys? Have you ever had that happen? Someone asks you, where are my keys? And you go about looking for them. You take it on as if it were your question that you're answering. So because of the work with the gene keys and human design, I have gotten very clear that that's a very natural tendency for me to be out of my lane in someone else's lane answering questions. I used to get text messages at all hours asking me questions that people could easily Google. But because I needed to be needed, right? That's part of it. And this open and undefined crown, I'm sitting here making myself busy. I'm getting myself busy and occupied with things that are not mine to do. So because of this work, I've been able to rein that in. So hopefully that supports somebody out there who has been at the throes of their own undefined center. So we're dealing with the crown today. We're dealing with the pineal gland. So think about that too, because there's this rigidity in the mind when there's definition. And also there's a direct connection to divine inspiration that can come with these defined minds, and also undefined, because again, we are way open channels. It's just more oftentimes what they say in human design when it's defined is that you have a more predictable pathway to that energy. So those are all distinctions you get to play with, and just suffice it to say for now, we're dealing with the mind. And we're dealing with the question, as I posed before with that open center, the question of why. And in the 61, in the Gene Key 61, the question of why, which is really the question of our reality, of our identity. Who are we? Why are we here? And what is happening here? What's the game? What's the purpose? What's the meaning? What's the point? That pressure lives in all of us, but the 61 is more related to that pressure, especially if your birthday is in this period, because the sun is shining on you. That means that is your life work. So chances are you deal in some way with education, knowledge, intellect. Intellect is the programming partner of this gene key, or religion. And maybe some of you are recovering fanatics, because that's where that can come from. So if we make this a little bit broader, the psychosis of the world comes from this idea that it knows what things are. And we saw that through COVID. We got front and center audience seats and maybe we were participants in, and we also got to watch what was happening on the world stage as people positioning themselves with what they know against each other, and really like wanting to defend that knowing to the end. No, I know that this is the truth and I will defend it. I will cancel you, whatever. Lots of communities got rearranged, people moved. It was just an incredible time to see this kind of psychosis at play. And that is the core of the shadow frequency of Gene Key 61. We see it play out in religion, and I think that's pretty well understood now. The dogmatism that comes from being more of a fundamentalist, whether you're a fundamentalist Christian, fundamentalist Jew, fundamentalist Muslim, any religion, when you get fundamental, you get mental, right? Fundamental is mental. You become dogmatic, meaning that you lose touch with your heart and you fight for propositions. And propositions only live in duality, which means you're already losing because the equal and opposite is always true in duality. But you don't care. Because why? Because it makes you feel safe. It makes you feel safe. It's a comfort zone. So either you've entered in through religion or you've entered in through science. And we saw that happen too. Science can get super narrow, super myopic, and it doesn't care about the context of something. I remember going to a conference. It was a microbiome conference. I was representing a company that was dealing in probiotics. So I love going to things where I don't know anything because I have an open and undefined crown. So I like to go to stuff that I have no idea what they're saying and truly embody don't know mind. So I listened to the latest research on fecal transplants. And I can't believe I'm bringing this up in this transmission, but okay, fecal transplants. It's a very cool thing. I'm hopefully not going to go down that rabbit hole, but it's really, really interesting. And the scientist was talking about the latest discoveries. And they were talking about a patient who had a fecal transplant, and then 6 months later, he was good for a while, and then it recurred, and they couldn't understand it, and they were getting into the very minutia of these genes, of the way these cells moved, and all the things. And I raised my hand, and I was like, "Did he start to eat gluten again?" Because in my mind, there's environment involved. What did he put in his mouth? And none of the researchers actually knew because the trial had nothing to do with the environment. They missed the point. So while this person may have been, and I don't know for sure, putting stuff in their bodies, which go down a tube, which gets synthesized into all the cells, that part was, we left that part out because that's not what we're studying. So just so we understand by way of an example, that's how scientific materialism is set up. It's about the parts rather than the terrain, the whole, the holistic nature of life. And that brings us to, why is this Gene Key 61 in the ring of Gaia? I was asking myself that question when I saw it, because I don't think of mental constructs as being part of the ring of Gaia, but it's because the nature of holism, the thing that scientist couldn't figure out in that fecal transplant study, is contained in every single cell of your body. The mystery is contained in every single cell. And we miss it. It's right there. We miss it when we get so myopic, so in our minds, so convinced that we're right. Gene Key 61 people are probably up against their beliefs that they're right. And that's answering a pressure within all of us to know something. Because that's part of how we're created. And that pressure can bring you on a path to be certain about stuff you're not certain about. and ask the wrong questions, or it can bring you on a path that opens up the whole world, the mysteries of the world to you. And this is how we move into the Holy of Holies. So Gene Key 61 is deeply spiritual. And oftentimes these people are not. So, and I say that generally when I say these people, I'm talking about what 61 does at the shadow level, but everybody's very different. This all plays out super differently. Everyone's at very different levels of their own awakening, their own evolution. So it's up for you actually to see how this applies to you, to see that how you can see yourself in it. I don't have 61, but I'm definitely part of humanity and definitely part of the modern world that has fixed ways of looking at things and doesn't like to be challenged. You know, we have a history of burning people at the stake, right? Or imprisoning people. Think about the notions around the world is actually round rather than flat, that the earth revolves around the sun. I mean, people were killed for those ideas. I'm going to go look at these comments in a minute. Thank you, sisters. Yeah, so the pressure is always there. I'm gonna get my notes out because now I'm gonna go into this really juicy territory that I love so much. This territory, I've been studying the Tibetan Book of the Dead. It's just, I just absolutely love it, even though I'm terrified of losing connection with the ego self. I've really gotten clear through lots of medicine journeys or guided journeys, or just observing the way I live life, and my dream state. But yet I'm super drawn to this mystical teaching of the Tibetan Book of the Dead. So I'm going to weave a little of this in here. Now, what's cool to note is that the Tibetan Book of the Dead it's part of a body of work that was hidden. It was hidden. It was actually hidden by the spiritual wife of the author over 1,000 years ago, knowing that when it was time, people would discover it. And it's also written highly obtuse. So it really wasn't technology that was for everyday people. And part of the decoding of it is already happening inside of our world as our consciousness evolves. So let's enter a little bit of the Holy of Holies in this way. And the pathway through that Holy of Holies, to that Holy of Holies, is revelation. It's inspiration. It's being outside of the realm of the mind so that the nature of reality can reveal itself to you. There are several pathways. This pathway of contemplation, like the Tibetan Book of the Dead talks about meditation, contemplation, and dream work, yoga work, Kriya yoga work, and dream work, even sexual yoga. So there's ways that the Tibetan Book of the Dead has identified, because it's a tantric book, of how you can use life on earth, everyday states, to understand and decode the teachings of the mystery. We also have plant medicine that has joined the 21st century as a popular way of shedding our current attached state of reality and opening up our doors of perception. William Blake said, That if the doors of perception were truly open, we would see that everything is infinite. Back to the ring of Gaia, all of our cells carries infinity inside of it. That's another aspect of how 61 has moved beyond the mind. Some people will stay stuck in their dogmatism, whether it's religion or scientific, but others will be persuaded or lured or seduced by the mystery herself to enter the Holy of Holies through blowing their mind. I remember when I was doing a leadership program, they actually showed us a video to start, and this physicist, like a rocket scientist, was interviewed, and he said, I thought I knew everything until I came to this leadership program, and then I realized that there's a whole world of what I don't know that I don't know. That is the beginning of entering into the Holy of Holies. The other way, like very simple, very Socratic method for the mind, is Byron Katie and her work, Loving What Is. So if you've ever done the work, how many of you, put it in the chat, how many of you have done the work? The work is a Socratic method for the mind. Is it true? Can I absolutely know that it's true? How do I feel when I think these thoughts? Who would I be without that thought? And then the turnaround, the 180-degree turnaround. I know everything becomes I know nothing. Could that be true or truer? Feels so good, right? It's like poof, already it opens up the doors of perception just to have that mind turned in on itself. So that's the heart of Socratic method. That's the heart of the work, where the mind is used to dissolve the mind. She recommends, if you do the work, that be done through written or with someone else, because our minds are so slippery that trying to do a process inside your own mind is like trying to do the process inside the problem itself. Yeah, the question was the work. Yeah, psychedelics too, if you want to put that down there. But I was asking about the work. How many of you have done Byron Katie's The Work? All right, so I want to go into a little bit of the teachings from the Tibetan Book of the Dead and kind of open up some of the Holy of Holies for us as we end this live stream. So the teacher in this, he's a Buddhist teacher, Andrew Holichek. I really love his work, and he teaches a lot about lucid dreaming. And I really had no idea. I have lucid dreamt before, which is being conscious inside your dreaming. But that's one of the ways of waking up inside of the pathway of mind stream. So mind, we call, in Buddhism, there's no soul. It's mind stream. It's mind and heart travel. They're the ones that go to the next iteration of our embodiment when this body dies. So as we know, those of you who are a part of my community, awakened people, awakened women, yoginis, meditators, spiritual devotees, you know that it's the mind. The mind, trained mind, is what prepares you for entering into these Holy of Holies. You know, Adyashanti says that awakening is spontaneous, but it is not haphazard. So that means that there's an element that it matters what we do with our time. It matters what we think. And as Andrew Holichek is saying, it matters what we dream. Because what we dream is really as a result of our karma and our samskaras. So being able to be a witness and to change your dream inside the dream gives you incredible skill sets for managing in the bardo. And the bardo is not just the place after the body drops, it's actually happening now in all the places, all the gaps in between, the gaps after a major loss. So if your partner dies, you don't just go to a new life, you go through a bardo, you go through this liminal place where nothing makes sense to you. And you're recalibrating yourself for a rebirth. It could happen to you through an illness. It could happen to you through your child going off to college and you're an empty nester. Anything that represents a change is bringing you into the realm of the bardo. And that shows you what you really think. It shows you how attached you are to things on the outside. As plant medicine will show you the same thing. I've talked many times in my transmissions about my work with DMT and traveling and traveling in consciousness out of my body, and how that was beautiful and terrifying. So I got to see the work that I have left as I work with my subconscious fears. I work with my attachments so that that transition can be just a transition to what's the next great thing. So Nobel physicist Brian Josephson said this thing, and I'm going to quote him here. We think that what we think is clear, but that's because we don't think clearly. Okay, I'm going to say that again. We think that we think clearly. We think that we think clearly, but that's because we don't think clearly. Okay, do you got that? Somebody type that into the chat. We think that we don't think clearly, and that's because we don't think clearly. Thank you. Yeah, type that into the chat. And so we're asking, most of the time, reality is dictated by the wrong question. So what we're able to perceive as a part of the mystery is highly limited because we don't know how to ask the right questions. You know, Andrew Holochek talks about it this way, that we come from an Aristotelian world, Aristotle, and we think in terms of things. So one of the questions he says he always gets is, what happens to it when I die? What happens to it? And he's like, that's a fundamentally erroneous question because there's no it. So the quality of our question is determining the nature of reality that we get to perceive. Really take that in, because it works on a quantum physics level and it works on a perception level. We're only able to see the thing that we have a question for, but also quantum physics says that the fact that we put our attention on that is what creates it. So everything's a wave, a wave, a wave, until we put and focus our attention, it becomes a particle. So when we're not asking the right question, our view of life is limited and we think it's the truth. We're like that rocket scientist. I thought I knew everything. That's so awesome. As an undefined crown, I never think that. I'm just constantly, the thing for the undefined crown is to be so out there in so many ways that you have no discipline with what you do think. So it's an invitation to be open and disciplined. And we're going to get into that in a second. So then Heisenberg, who's a Nobel laureate in physics, said, what we discover in science is not reality itself. Thank God someone said this. It had to be a physicist, but write this down. What we discover in science is not reality itself, but reality as revealed through the methods of investigation, i.e., the question we've asked, the way we've set up to investigate. Go back to my fecal transplant scientists, right? Their method of investigation yielded them data, information, but it wasn't the full picture. Because this guy had symptoms of leaky gut again, or celiac again. Why? Asking a different question outside the methods of investigation. So let me read that again. What we discover in science is not reality itself, but reality as revealed through the methods of investigation. And so what Andrew Holacek says from the Buddhist point of view is that the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the technology, as you, if you will, of the Tibetan Book of the Dead can be proven, but it cannot be proven in the Aristotelian way of a thing, because there's no thing that's happening here. You can't apply thing logic to no thing, emptiness. Is this, are you guys getting this? Like, I love this stuff so much. Let me know how you love it. Let me know what you're taking away here. CJ, I see your and Christine's questions. Okay, so Andrew in our class restated the question, and I want to restate it for you here. I think it's really worth it. So instead of like what happens when it crosses over, dies, when the body drops and the soul or the mind or the consciousness goes, those are things. He said, instead, this is the question. It feels like a koan. Yeah, totally. It's a puzzle. Exactly. Exactly. What are the causes and conditions, the confluence of which create continuity of consciousness? I love that. It's so good. What are the causes and conditions, the confluence of which create the continuity of consciousness? So that means that we can ask that question not even about death. What are the causes and conditions right now that, as they get woven together, produce a continuity between where I am now and where I have to use Aristotelian language so that we can speak, and where I am going, right? Where this mind stream is going. So how we unlock the Holy of Holies, how we see beyond the veil, how we pierce that veil is through waking up now. And waking up now means that there are causes and conditions that together alchemize the continuity of our minds. So Padmasambhava, who wrote the Tibetan Book of the Dead, never died. Yes, his body stopped breathing and his heart stopped beating and his body decayed. But Padmasambhava never died, because his continuity of mind, where he was as he was occupying a body, is the same state as when that consciousness left that body. Freaking amazing, right? Beautiful. And so that's the entry place of the Holy of Holies. That's like That's like the nature of reality, the vast emptiness, which is not really empty, or the no thing, which is no thing, which is everything. We have direct access to that in every cell of our being. And the pathway to it is revelation. It's these tiny ways that we see beyond the veil. Whether it's a moment when you're looking at the sunset, or you're gazing in the eyes of a child. Sometimes it happens when I'm sitting in my car and I see someone walk across the street and I almost start bawling. It's those moments that the divine intervenes. There is no way to explain it. There's no way to replicate it even, except to live in that frequency. Or there's a plant medicine journey, or any kind of sacred medicine journey where you see the unity consciousness, the beauty and the unity consciousness of everything. Then you know in that moment you have entered the Holy of Holies. You have entered sanctity. You have entered reality, the true nature of everything. And the more that you and I, as those who identify with the body, we're playing the game of identifying with this body, the more that we look at our attachments, the more that we learn to let go, the more that we are unafraid to feel the feeling of that Bardo place. I mean, part of the Tibetan Book of the Dead text, and the thing that I have read to my dogs as they've transitioned, is to just know, and here's the word for us here, to just know that those thoughts and those feelings, those emotions are made up from the mind. And when we can pull away and witness, have the experience, but not take it as truth, and part of us can witness ourselves having the experience, then we're developing the muscle of being with phenomenon, like people seeming to die, houses getting burned down, mudslides happening, tragedy, people getting a virus and dying, or getting sick, or losing a baby, all the things that are so tragic to us. And indeed, in this three-space reality, absolutely. Having the experience of that and dissolving into the allowance of that, like just the like that surrender, the breath in it, with the open hands, starts to support us to working the muscle to entering into the Holy of Holies. The stuff is so juicy, and it's so about life here and now. As I age, I get very much close to the transition, knowing that if I live a normal human lifespan, these last decades are really going to be me mastering my mind, not controlling it, working with it in that way, that to become more and more subtle and less identified with this thing, which I love very much. I love the experience of being in a body. I love having a body. I love all the joys of being in a body. That's in my gene keys. And To be attached to the body while you know as you age is a no-win proposition. You know, you set, like Eckhart Tolle says, you set an apple out on the table and just keep watching it, it's going to decay. It just is. And that's okay, because that apple, that flesh, the outer shell is not who I am. So let's enter the Holy of Holies, sisters, and discover who we really are while we enjoy this incredibly beautiful game. And the world is your oyster. So I'm going to end here. I love being with you. Yeah, Elizabeth Lesser's meditations. Yeah, I think it's called Living in the End, or Living with the End in Mind, something like that. Beautiful tomes on death. Oh, Tanja's here. It's so beautiful to have you here from Macedonia. Yeah, so what if you rarely dream? And then CJ says, we dream every night. It's how our unconscious makes sense of your conscious reality to integrate your lived experiences. Yeah. Some people are not aware of their dreams. Part of, listening to Andrew Holochek, he wrote a book on lucid dreaming, and he said that during his retreat, he actually, and some teachers do this, he actually sat up and slept, because that is how you're more awake and aware during your dream state. During that rapid eye movement, REM state, you're dreaming. And he said that the actual stages of sleep and dreaming are the stages of death itself. Like falling asleep is the death, the loss of the body. And then the rapid eye movement and the dreaming is the bardo. And then the deep sleep is that incarnation, the rebirth. I just think that's so cool. So what he teaches, and the reason why they sleep sitting up, is to be aware and awake when it's happening, so that they can actually enter the dream space and be conscious in it. So because the teachings are that your karma and your samskara, your unconscious, subconscious mind, is like off-gassing itself during the night space. And I have lots of really weird shit dreams and terrors and all that stuff. So this is a great practice for someone like me. I had a dream where the only recollection I have of lucid dreaming, where I was going to be attacked and killed. And I knew that in the dream. And I woke up inside the dream and I was like, no, this is not going to happen. And I stopped the whole thing. That's what the teachings are to do inside of your dream. So that you have a mastery that when you've lost the body at death, and what they say is that it's like flying. So imagine you are flying. That mimics the death space. You have lost the body. You have no density to you. It's very light, and very light is very slippery. You have no grounding. Remember how, we always say like, oh, I don't feel grounded. Okay, death is the quintessential not grounded, because you don't have your body. But if you train your mind, so when your mind creates a reality, so what happens inside of death, according to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, is that you will meet your maker. You will meet your mind. You will meet your own terrors, your own thoughts. You will meet them. And so if you are lucid dreaming and you're waking up inside the dream, you're like, oh, I'm dreaming. And no to that, No, I am not getting killed, or no, I am not getting raped, or no, I am not getting beaten or hurt or whatever. You have the capacity to interrupt that. So the teaching is to develop that strength when you actually have a say about it. Isn't that exciting? Yeah, you're so welcome, sisters. This has been really fun. I don't know how I'm going to title this YouTube now. It's just like, it's beyond the mind, into death. Yeah, if you have any suggestions for the takeaway of the title of this YouTube, please put it in the chat. I would love to see what you're saying, so that other people who are interested in this message get drawn to it. So we're going to pop over in 10 minutes to Walking the Razor's Edge. If you are inside of the Evolving Sisters Network community, if you'd like to be, it's evolvingsisters.com, $22 a month right now for our founding membership. I don't know if this will be the case by the time people are listening to the replay. Thoughts Without Borders. I love that, Tracy. It's awesome. Yeah, so we're going to jump there to do every Sunday afterwards. We integrate. It's a big integration happening, and we will do a pineal gland exercise in about 10 minutes. And then I hope to see some of you at the workshop on Thursday. The World is Your Oyster. If you're listening on the replay and it's past Thursday, you can always buy this on the website. It's a course called The World is Your Oyster. And it's so epic. It's a process of living in this zone of mystery to cause and create magic, serendipity, and fun and play in everyday life. And it has nothing to do with whether shit happens, because shit happens. So we want to count on shit happening. And so who do we get to be inside of shit happening? That's the paraphrase. All right, loves, so fun to be with you. Thank you, Crystal. Lots and lots of love. And I'll see you next Sunday.